one astronaut in particular, witnessing to the gospel and giving praise to Christ. I think I'm hope that this is evidence of a trend coming about here in the United States.
Yeah, and let's start with that. It's astronaut Victor Glover, and this was his message before losing communication, because they lost communication, I think, for about 40 minutes when they were on the backside.
Yeah, happens every time. By the way, I grew up with the space program. That was always the scary thing then, in particular, because when they are on the opposite side of the moon, and the command module, the guy running the command module for the space landings, he was circling the moon, and he would be out of connection with Earth and the astronauts on the moon regularly. So this is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, here we go. Listen to this.
Remind you of one of the most important mysteries there on earth, and that's love. Christ said in response to what was the greatest command, that it was to love God with all that you are. And he also, being a great teacher, said the second is equal to it, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so as we prepare to go out of radio communication, we're still to feel your love from Earth, and to all of you down there on Earth and around Earth, we love you from the moon.
Houston copies. We'll see you on the other side.
We will see you on the other side.
Wow. And then they went behind the moon, and they came back out, and they resumed communications. They made it through.
Yeah, when you think about the significance of this, first of all, they're farther away than any human being has ever been from Earth. I think that's really important. I mean, some people might even find it insignificant just because, well, so what? It's a little bit farther. Well, I think that's a really big deal. They're 40 minutes out of contact with anyone else. They are literally in front of God and no one else, just the four of them, there. So that's really important. And then here is everywhere in government. I mean, I mentioned the earlier admissions of Christ's sovereignty over the earth, but you saw this from the Secretary of State, from Pete Hegseth. You're seeing this all around government, and it's something that we've needed. We've been moving into a neo-pagan culture aggressively in the Biden administration. And you are going to see the left constantly hating this admission to God's sovereign providence over the affairs of men and over all the universe. But I think we need to keep asserting it, because it is because God is sovereign over the affairs of men that we submit everything we do and what we do in the government to him, or should do so, because he judges nations. And so anyway, I find this very pleasing. I think that every person listening who watches this, you should also be a bit more direct in your honoring of God and what you do. I'm not saying you got to go say it all the time everywhere, but you just need to be aware. You are a witness to Christ if you claim him. And if you haven't been a very good witness to Christ, you need to claim him in faith and undertake his substitutionary death so that you may be transformed in faith to knowing him. But this is a good time, this moment in American history, and it's something we need to build upon.
Yeah, and this also kind of relates back to a story we haven't talked about on this show, but we've talked about on the network. And that was a Chicago Bulls player who stood up for his faith, Jaden Ivey, who opposed the LGBTQ movements and events that the NBA and the Chicago Bulls puts on, and he was released from the team. And I know they used, other reasons for his play and stuff like that, but we all know what he was released for.
Major sports organizations are as much political efforts as politician efforts are. In fact, everything we do in the public has a political bent to it. which is one of the reasons, just a quick side note here, one of the reasons that every one of you that claims Christ but says, listen, I don't want to get involved in that politics stuff. Every time you're in front of another human being, you're in the middle of politics in one form or another. You are to be a witness and light and salt to the earth. That is your responsibility. But that also includes into the political sphere. But what you saw with that David Ivey thing is the remaining residue of this pagan, godless, hateful, woke way of thinking that still exists in certain areas of our culture. You overwhelm that with light. I don't say you overwhelm that with your anger and yelling them down. And there might be a reason to be firm or angry, because even God is angry about it every day, all day long. He is angry at man's sin. But the reality is, it doesn't have to always be in the form of anger. It needs to be in the form, though, of rebuke and of clarification and of standing up for your faith. And you're apologetic. As Peter said, you need to give an account for the hope that is in you. And that word for giving an account is apologia in the Greek, which is where we get apologetics. We make an argument for. And you need to be doing that in your lives. If you claim Christ, you need to be doing it everywhere. Because obviously, with the James Ivey situation, people on the left they're making their argument. You need to make yours back. And yours is filled with light if you truly follow Christ, and that light overcomes darkness.
Yep. Yeah. Well, let's stay on the topic of the Artemis space program for one more clip. After they gained communication back yesterday, they got to talk to Jared Isaacman, who's the director of NASA, and then they also got to speak to the president. And here's just a short clip of that.
I really look forward to, when we can, I look forward to seeing you in the Oval Office. I'll ask Jared to bring you over, and I'll ask for your autograph, because I don't really ask for autographs much, but you deserve that. You really are something. Everybody's talking about this. And I look forward to having you in the Oval Office at the White House, and we will celebrate your incredible achievements and triumphs. This is big. This is really big stuff. The whole world is talking about it. And if you have the time, I will certainly find the time. I've been pretty busy also, as you know, but I will absolutely find the time, and we'll get together. And I'm going to be giving you a big salute on behalf of the American people and beyond that.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. And when you want us, we will be there. And thank you for your leadership. Thank you to Jared for his leadership. Really, thank you for taking the time out today to visit NASA. It's really special for us, but it's really special for the team on the ground. A whole team of people all around the world pulled this off. And we just want to say thank you to all of you for this. It is the thrill and honor of a lifetime to have been on this journey. Today was amazing, but this 3-year journey has been amazing, and it was made possible by the American people and the Canadian people. And we're so grateful to you all. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. And Jared, congratulations. We'll see you soon. And I know that you have Mars very much in your mind, so we'll start thinking about that pretty soon, I think. And thank you. Congratulations to everybody. I'll see you at the Oval Office.
Thank you for your time, Mr. President. It's been an honor.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Said pretty incredible.
Pretty incredible. And by the way, did you notice the little bit of male-female anthropology there? Glover spun the microphone around so it was kind of spinning, and the woman comes and stops it and sets things back in order. That was really funny. But listen, this is this is really amazing. I mean, this kind of connection that Donald Trump does so well. You know, he's going to fight back when people are trying to destroy him. And we have had some insane people trying to destroy him and our country. They're called Democrats, by the way. And that has been a dispiriting, disheartening situation in our country, as those people have been allowed to have any source of power in any form or fashion. Nancy and Pelosi and Chuck Schumer despise Americans. They despise those who will not allow them to run roughshod politically over everyone's lives. But Donald Trump, when you have a situation like this, he handles it perfectly well. He loves the American people and the what other people like these 4 astronauts do to achieve so much. He respects them and shows them that respect. This is what always was part of what, American excellence had been about, the honor and respect of the good work of other people. So this is very heartening to see. This really is a huge, huge accomplishment. People aren't going to notice it because we're sort of in the post Apollo 11 era, where everyone was glued to what the Apollo 11 crew did, walking on the moon for the first time. And then the interest seemed to dwindle off. But the crazy amount of science and work and coordination and help necessary to do these things is so easily forgotten because it all happens in the background. So thank you, Donald Trump, for doing this, and thank you to these astronauts for undertaking really a very dangerous mission with such grace. And it's not over yet. They still have to re-enter the atmosphere. That's a huge, huge issue as well.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to another big story from today. Obviously, we've been talking about it, is the Iran situation. And President Trump put out a Truth Social this morning that's getting a lot of attention. He put out, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight. One of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran. So that is getting a lot of attention on X and on all the podcasts today, Jim. And the White House has ruled out that he is talking about a nuclear weapon. I saw those reports as well. So I think,
no.
I think it's a little bit of a scare tactic, don't you think?
I think he's dead serious. If he says he's going to do something and it comes to it, he doesn't just blow smoke that way. I mean, we saw that in Venezuela. No one thought that we were going to undertake the operation we did in Venezuela. No one.
Yeah,
while
but
we had ships.
He's not actually talking about
no, I think he'll do it. I'm just telling you, I don't know if it'll be this time. He may come to it, like he's willing to keep talking as much as talking can happen up to a certain point, but there will be a break point. No one thought he'd do what he did in Venezuela. Do you remember the shock that was there? I mean, I was asked this in another interview earlier today, and the very same question. I think he's dead serious. I think he would do it, and I don't think he wants to do it. But the reality is, his determination is to absolutely end the problem that has been in Iran, and he's determined to do it without a massive ground force. And I hope it never gets to that. But I would watch. I think that's what he's saying right there. Don't underestimate it. If he is successful at changing the problem in Iran to something good, which will change 3 major things. The Middle East is already totally changed. You actually are going to have a degree of harmony, and it might be sometimes not entirely comfortable, but you're going to have a degree of harmony in the Middle East none of us has ever seen in our lifetime. 1. 2, you have Europe called out for the weak countries that they are. The rabidly, well, I shouldn't say rabidly, but the absolutely stupid countries that they've become in their leadership, not the people, but the leadership, some of the people. And then Russia and China are on their heels. They see what the United States has done here. And even though any military engagement with them would come with losses that would be devastating in their effect and feel, they both know there's no way they can overcome the U.S. military when it is given direction by someone like Donald Trump. This is a radical positive change. And when it comes back to what it comes to Iran, I mean, this could stop something that has been an annoying problem for the world for 47 years. And as I say, and I told you privately earlier, it takes 47 to end 47 years of all this.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we got to go to break. When we come back, we have more on Iran, including some of the reports coming out from the state media there in Iran. We'll be right back here in just a moment.
We have a big announcement, folks. It's called Bella Melt. In the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria, this is where you make, we talked about it before, this is where you produce energy in your cells. It actually tells those mitochondria to burn fat for fuel.
MelissaHouseBG.com just now introducing for the first time Bella Melt with GLP-1 fast action.
All right, welcome back from the break. I'm joined back by Jim Pfaff of theconservativecaucus.com. We left off talking about Iran, and President Trump has said that his deadline is 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight. And there's been reports that communication has been cut off. Those, I'm not sure if they are legit or not, but there is clips from the state TV in Iran coming out of we don't have to play because it's in different language, but they're calling for mothers and fathers to get their children to go out to the streets and stand in front of targets. Basically asking parents to volunteer their children as human shields, Jim.
You know what is really going to happen if that were to take place? Is they're going to force people to go out there,
Yeah.
one. Two, look what they've called out. We use human shields. They just said it out loud. And, it's a reminder of how perverse and evil and unconnected to reality these people are as terrorists. They're literally terrorists, and it's an outrage. And by the way, even though I would not ascribe these particular tactics to Democrats in terms of the actual violence and terrorism involved, at least not at this stage, this is exactly what Democrats do too. They call people out to sacrifice themselves, not for the greater good, not for truth, but so that they can be used as pawns for a political end. That's happening in Iran right now for different types of reasons. But this is what Democrats do here locally in the United States. These violent No Kings protests rise up, utilizing people willing to be not quite a human shield, but a useful pawn for Democrat political desires to gain and grab power. It's the same evil way of thinking that we're dealing with around the world, and it is high time that we see it go away.
Yep. And staying on this for just a moment, here is Vice President J.D. Vance on the situation in Iran as well.
But we feel confident that we can get a response, whether it's positive or negative. We're going to get a response from the Iranians by 8 o'clock tonight. I hope they make the right response, because what we really want is we want a world where oil and gas is flowing freely, where people can afford to heat their homes and cool their homes, where people can afford to transport themselves to work. That's not going to happen if the Iranians are engaged in acts of economic terrorism. So they've got to know we've got tools in our toolkit that we so far haven't decided to use. The President of the United States can decide to use them, and he will decide to use them if the Iranians don't change their course of conduct.
All right. So he says we have tools that we can use that we've not used yet. But again, there has been reports that the White House is saying those are not nuclear weapons he's talking about.
Correct. But just I want to reemphasize what I said earlier in the first segment. Mm-hmm. He does intend to do this. And if they don't respond, I predict that he will do it. And tonight, don't hesitate. Now, if they still have some reason to talk, I think he may let it go a little bit further, but it's not going to be much more. He is dead serious about this. He has been dead serious about everything else. And whether you like it or not, that's in the offing. Now, that said, I think it's great that we've got a president who's actually serious. Remember, this is in contrast to Obama's red line with Syria that extended all these problems that grew worse and worse and worse in Syria over time that eventually led to the creation of ISIS and massive destruction in the Middle East. This is the contrast. I mean, Obama and his people are trying to say, well, we really had Iran controlled on the nuclear weapon thing with JCPOA. That Donald Trump's not telling the truth. We had him on the ropes. He never did. The Middle East was worse under Barack Obama than it even was under Bill Clinton after having been really bad in the 70s and 80s. But this has been a lingering problem for a long period of time. Donald Trump understands that, and I think he's absolutely determined to do something about it at this moment. Whether you think that's a good thing or not, that's what's in the offing, and it's about to take place.
Yeah, and he actually talked to Brett Baier. Brett Baier was reporting that he talked to him, and he confirms the 8 p.m. deadline is set. And unless something changes, it's going to happen. So we'll continue to watch it. I have a few clips from yesterday that we didn't get to. Here is one from President Trump's press conference he had talking about Joe Biden and Kim Jong-un. Watch this.
To protect us from Kim Jong-un, who I get along with very well, as you know. Do you notice he said very nice things about me? He used to call Joe Biden a mentally retarded person. Okay, so.
And he went on to say he called him a mentally retarded person. It's very horrible. He was very mean to Joe.
That's why he caught me drinking, because I was waiting for the rest of that to come.
That one was a shorter one.
I find hilarious. But yeah, Joe Biden, just think about where we're at right now. You had a massive expansion of terrorism abroad and a massive expansion of racial politics increase under Barack Obama. You come to Joe Biden, where he wasn't even running anything. And I have to say, I'm more and more willing to be with Donald Trump and say, Joe Biden wasn't elected in 2020. I really question this. You just look at the numbers, you just got to wonder. But if we put that aside, this guy was initiated into office by some process whereby a man who truly had no mental capacity was not running the country with the auto pen being used by people who were bringing destruction on everything about us, including a massive influx of illegal aliens in this country. And now we have a real leader doing real things, and you can agree or disagree with it. But there are a couple of things that I could say I have problems with, and I talk about. But the reality is that we have a leader in this country for the first time in a long time, and it's incredibly refreshing because we're pushing back against the stupidity that was official Washington prior to his coming on the scene. I've said it before, I'll say it again. In 2016, I made this prediction. If Donald Trump becomes president, he's going to turn over the trash cans in Washington, D.C. and reveal what the real problems are. He has done that and continues to do it. And that statement of his is just really nice to see because it rightly puts into perspective the problems that have existed.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we have a few minutes left. I didn't screen this with you or ask you about it, but I'm going to go ahead and play it because I think you are going to have a good response. Let's watch this clip from, I don't know who this guy is, but he was on Tucker's show, I think yesterday. Watch this.
I would actually argue, and this is a bold statement, a democratic republic is the greatest government experiment in the history of humanity. I would say
I've enjoyed it.
You've enjoyed it. Yeah. So we enjoy it. I love America. You love America.
I do.
Capitalism should not be anywhere near Christianity.
You think?
Christianity is more, and I don't like the word socialist with the weight it carries, but Christianity is socialism at its core.
Non-authoritarian.
It's the marker to build social capital. You look at that early Church of Acts and it transformed Rome within a couple hundred years, the greatest superpower of its time, to where Constantine was like, I'm a Christian hanging out with these dudes. They had no money. They had no buildings, but somehow the love of their neighbor transformed the greatest superpower of its time. That's dangerous.
Jim, you have a response?
Who is that guy, by the way? I saw this video earlier. I don't even know who he is.
I don't know who he is either.
So let me just make this very, very clear. Everything he said is entirely false, and it's absurd for Tucker Carlson to be saying, oh, yeah. What do you mean, yeah? That is not even biblical. Just as one foundation of all this, one of the fundamental aspects of capitalism is personal property rights that are not to be abrogated by government systems. That is one of the most fundamental aspects of wisdom in Proverbs and of authority in all of the Pentateuch, the way God laid out the law and so forth. Property is a fundamental right. So that aspect of capitalism, and I could spend a lot more time showing how the Bible is absolutely capitalistic at its core. But here's the second thing. He refers to the early church in Acts as an example of this socialism of which he speaks. And when you read very closely, and I'm going to be talking about this, I'm working on a book right now that I'm going to lay a lot of these things out in. But the reality that people don't get because they don't read the book of Acts very closely, and the New Testament in general, in Paul's letters in Acts, in every single way, the charity that was taking place at that time was primarily, and in fact, almost exclusively to help those within the church who were poor and destitute. There certainly were some aspects of charity that were discussed in terms of being charitable to others. We also read in the early church fathers like Justin Martyr and others that Christians were out saving aborted babies who were put out in the woods to be eaten by wolves. And other kindnesses that were done broadly to people. There's no doubt that a broad charity was not part of the early church. But when you read the book of Acts, that was for the supporting believers who were coming to Christ and had no means because they were in an unrighteous culture that was not capitalistic. FYI, Rome was not capitalistic. It was entirely corporatistic in special favors. People were given secondary rights in the Roman system. What changed is that capitalism grew out of Christian sentiment. But that charity was never intended to be a government system, nor was it ever a government system for centuries thereafter, even under Christian leaders. So that charity is an individual command. It is not a social command. Mm-hmm. And that needs to be emphasized. Socialism has nothing to do with Christianity in any shape, form, or fashion.
Yep. Well, we're all out of time. Go to @JimPaff on X to keep up with Jim, or theconservativecaucus.com. And we'll be back tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Central Time at worldviewtube.com. Till then, take care.
Go to worldviewtalk.com. Get your satellite phone like I have, because you know what? China is in on our power grid. That is a matter of proven fact. If you want to have communications with your loved ones, your family, your children, maybe your spouse travels, maybe you have a child away at college, you want communication should the grid go down. That's why you need a satellite phone, worldviewtalk.com. But look what else they have. They also have solar generators. I have one of their solar generators. I have the Delta Echo 400, a solar generator. So I can, of course, charge my satellite phone. I can run my coffee pot. I can run my whole house if I want to. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com, or use that number, 1-866-738-3224. They have very friendly operators that will explain to you their products, but you can explain to them what it is you're desiring to acquire. How much electricity are you wanting to generate with this solar generator? Well, they'll tell you what size you need. Worldviewtalk.com or 1-866-738-3224. Tonight on the Worldview Report, Wisconsin Republican Senator Johnson breaks with President Trump on strikes on civilian infrastructure in Iran. Saudi Arabia, they order immediate evacuation of Riyadh's entire King Abdullah financial district. They have fears of Iranian missiles or drones attacking. The 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, they rule that Iowa can indeed immediately enforce its law banning explicit books and restricting LGBTQ topics in K through 6th grade classrooms. And in Maine, the Supreme Court strikes down Democrats and their attempt to expand ranked choice voting, calling the scheme unconstitutional. And a new analysis warns that today's stagflation, well, it is far more dangerous and structural than the 1970s version, and it will be much harder to fix. And President Trump sharply goes after Tucker Carlson, calling his criticism of the Iran war very unhelpful and disgraceful. And the United States, they conduct direct strikes on Iran's critical Kharg Island oil export terminal, prompting Tehran to declare that restraint is over. And then in my Worldview Report commentary tonight, we'll look at Tucker Carlson's hypocrisy for criticizing others for mocking faith while he has repeatedly ridiculed core Christian beliefs. All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brandon House. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brandon House.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. I'm Brandon House. We start off tonight with an article from Just the News. It reports that Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson has publicly broken with President Trump on the strategy of bombing Iranian civilian infrastructure. Senator Johnson said, quote, "I do not want to see us start blowing up civilian infrastructure. We are not at war with the Iranian people. We're trying to liberate them," end quote. And then he added that the U.S. is, quote, "at war with about 1 million of the elites, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the other security forces, and the people who are brutally ruling that country," end quote. Johnson expressed hope that Trump's threats to strike the civilian targets, well, such as power plants and oil facilities, are merely bluster. And he said he supports confronting the Iranian regime, but strongly opposes actions that would harm ordinary Iranians that the U.S. aims to liberate. The comments, they come as President Trump has issued strong warnings about striking Iranian energy infrastructure. That's if the Strait of Hormuz is not reopened. Now we turn to an article from the Saudi press. They report that authorities have ordered the immediate evacuation of Riyadh's King Abdullah Financial District, also known as KAFD. This is a precautionary measure amid escalating regional tensions with Iran. The evacuation order, it includes all major business towers, banks, corporate headquarters, and government financial offices within the district. Officials, they cited the risk of potential Iranian missile or drone attacks as the primary reason for the move. King Abdullah Financial District, it is Riyadh's premier economic and financial hub, hosting numerous international banks, investment firms, and corporate offices. The article notes that the decision, well, it reflects heightened security concerns inside the kingdom as the U.S.-Israel military campaign against Iran continues, and as Iranian threats against the Gulf targets have indeed increased. The evacuation, it was carried out swiftly and orderly, with workers instructed to leave the area immediately. An article from Front Page Mag reports that a new survey shows 56% of Israeli voters age 18 to 22 now identify as right-wing, marking a significant generational shift to the right as compared to previous generations. The poll, it reveals that this age group is considerably more conservative than older generations. The article attributes the trend largely to the traumatic events of the October 7th, 2023 Hamas massacre and the ongoing multi-front war that Israel has faced since that day. Many young voters that were interviewed said that these experiences have hardened their views on security, the Palestinian issue, settlement expansion in Judea and Samaria, and opposition to a two-state solution, and of course, the necessity of a strong military and strong military actions. Support for right-wing positions, as they call them, on these issues, well, it has grown sharply within this demographic, with many young Israelis expressing deep skepticism toward international pressure and calls for territorial concessions. The piece, it argues that this demographic shift, well, it could have profound long-term implications for Israeli politics, with younger voters moving decisively rightward. Thus, right-wing coalitions may become more stable and dominant in future elections, potentially reshaping the country's political landscape for decades to come. An article from CRN News reports that the 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled that Iowa can immediately enforce its law banning certain books and restricting discussions of LGBTQ topics in kindergarten through 6th grade classrooms. The law prohibits school materials that depict or describe sex acts, and it limits age-inappropriate content related to gender identity and sexual orientation for young students. It was challenged by a coalition of booksellers, authors, and of course, LGBTQ activist groups who argued it violated free speech. The appeals court lifted a previous lower court injunction allowing the restrictions to take effect while the legal challenge continues. Iowa, their officials, they praised the decision as a victory for parental rights and protecting young children from explicit content. Now we turn to an article from The Federalist. It reports that the Maine Supreme Court, they have ruled against a Democratic-backed plan to expand what is known as ranked choice voting. They say it's being done in a way that violates the state's constitution. The court, they struck down the legislature's efforts to implement this so-called ranked choice voting for presidential elections and other races. As I said, declaring the scheme unconstitutional. Maine's voters, they had previously approved ranked choice voting for some elections, but Democrats in the legislature, they tried to expand and entrench it further through a bill that bypassed proper constitutional procedures. The court determined that the legislature, well, they lacked the authority to impose the system in the manner attempted, and that it conflicted with Maine's constitutional requirements for elections. Ruling it is a significant victory for election integrity and their advocates who argue that ranked choice voting, well, it creates confusion, disenfranchises many voters, and it violates the principle of one person, one vote. The decision, it prevents the controversial voting method from being used in additional races without a proper constitutional amendment. An article from Brownstone Institute reports that the current combination of persistent high inflation and economic stagflation is fundamentally different and potentially far more dangerous than the stagflation that the United States experienced during the 1970s. The author explains that the 1970s stagflation, well, it was largely triggered by external oil shocks and loose monetary policy under the Nixon and Carter administrations. In contrast to today's version, which is the direct result of massive government spending, unprecedented monetary expansion, and that occurred during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. And then you add in supply-side disruptions caused by heavy regulations and energy policies, and a broad erosion of public trust in our very institutions. The article warns that this so-called new stagflation is not a temporary cyclical problem, but the predictable outcome of years of interventionist policies that have indeed distorted markets, weakened the real economy, and created a structural imbalance that is much harder to correct. Peace, It notes that traditional policy responses that eventually help resolve the 1970s crisis, such as aggressive interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve, well, they may prove indeed to be ineffective or even counterproductive this time around because of record high national debt levels. The scale of entitlement obligations also has to be added to the equation, and the loss of consumer and business confidence. Because as we know, what really is the foundation of the American dollar is consumer confidence. We believe it has value. The author, he argues that today's stagflation is rooted in deeper issues, including fiscal irresponsibility, regulatory overreach, and as I said, a loss of faith in governing institutions, thus making it very difficult to escape without significant policy reversals. And do you really think Washington, D.C. is going to cut the size of government, tighten its belt, and stop expanding the balance sheet? I don't. We'll be right back after this short break.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview. Welcome back from the break. And as always, thank you to all of you that do support our broadcast and this program. We are a listener-supported network and broadcast, and there are many ways you can support us, but one of the most powerful ways is through our foundation by making a contribution at worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. You also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. So thank you for doing that. Worldviewfoundation.com. Now, don't forget about our national conference coming up Friday night, October 23rd, Saturday, October 24th, our 22nd annual Worldview Weekend National Conference. This year, we're moving it to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a suburb, Waukesha, and we'll hold it at the Waukesha Expo Center. Last year, we were there for just one night, a free rally, and it was filled to capacity. This is Friday night, all day Saturday, our actual national conference with about 7 or 8 speakers all together. Now, for the first time in 22 years, we're making it free. We're going to raise the funds throughout the year and take some offerings while we're there. Renting the building alone will cost over $10,000 for that 2 days. So if you appreciate all we're doing, of course, we also have to pay the speakers honorariums, their airfare, hotel, car rental. So if you appreciate all we're doing, worldviewfoundation.com helps us do a lot of things for free. Now, if you would like to get your ticket that's free, it is free, but you have to have a ticket so we don't overfill the building. You can do that by going to worldviewtube.com/events, worldviewtube.com/events. All right? So thank you for spreading the word about our national conference, Friday night, October 23rd, Saturday, October 24th. And thank you for supporting us through the foundation. that helps us push out so much content and a Christian Worldview Conference for free. WorldviewFoundation.com. An article from the New York Post reports that President Trump has sharply attacked Tucker Carlson over his recent criticism and commentary about the U.S.-Israel military campaign against Iran. According to the report, President Trump told associates that Carlson's statements on the war have been, quote, very unhelpful, end quote, and accused him of spreading false narratives that undermine the operation. The president reportedly described some of Carlson's claims as disgraceful and said that Carlson was, quote, playing into the hands of the enemy, end quote. The article notes this public rift between President Trump and Carlson. Carlson was at one time one of his strongest media supporters, but the article points out that this rift has grown significantly as Tucker Carlson repeatedly questioned the necessity and the conduct of the Iran conflict. President Trump's criticisms, well, they come as he continues to defend the operation and push for a decisive outcome. Reportedly, President Trump has called Tucker Carlson low IQ. We turn now to another article at the New York Post that reports the United States has conducted direct strikes on Iran's most important oil export terminal at Karg Island. Karg Island is Iran's primary oil export hub, handling the vast majority of the country's crude oil shipments. The strikes, well, they represent a major escalation in the ongoing U.S.-Israel campaign against the Iranian regime, and it's aimed at crippling Tehran's main source of revenue. Iranian officials, well, they immediately responded by declaring that restraint is over, and they threatened severe retaliation. The attack, it is seen as a direct attempt to cut off the flow of oil that funds Iran's military operations, their missile program, and support for proxy militias across the region. The move also comes as President Trump has repeatedly warned Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face even more devastating consequences. Well, now it's time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. Tucker Carlson has claimed that President Trump, or any president, is wrong to criticize Islam, claiming that it's wrong to criticize another religion or faith. Well, I don't know what's wrong with Tucker Carlson other than maybe it's just he's a hypocrite, because Tucker Carlson has platformed some of the most hateful people, at least making hateful comments about Zionists, Christian Zionists, Jews, comments about those who believe in the rapture of the church prior to the tribulation. Tucker himself said how much he dislikes the Christian Zionist. He has proclaimed that the idea of Christian Zionism is some kind of heresy. So Tucker Carlson is known for criticizing the faith of many Christians around the world and becoming a major defender of Islam. Now, why would I not criticize Islam? Of course you should. It is a demonic, satanic religion. Now, what apparently has Tucker so upset is that President Trump on Resurrection Sunday put out a tweet. And yes, it contains some language I wish he wouldn't use. But what really seemed to upset Tucker also was that President Trump, after talking about striking Iran, said, "Praise be to Allah." Apparently, the president was mocking Islam. I have no problem with that. But Tucker sure did. Tucker, who I think has mocked biblical Christians and allowed many people to come on his platform and mock Christians and Zionism and Christian Zionism, is now all of a sudden highly offended that President Trump is mocking Islam. Of course, you should mock Islam. You should do more than mock it. You should refute it. You should expose it. You should call it out for what it is. It's a demonic backwoods religion. It's more than a religion. It's an ideology. It's a philosophy. It's a worldview. It's one of the 6 dominant worldviews of the world. And yet, did you know that Islam promotes incest? Yeah, we learned it from some of the leading scholars that define what is Sharia or Islamic law. Today on my radio show, I had on Usama Dakdok. He speaks Arabic. He has translated the Quran perfectly, word for word, into American English, where it is not whitewashed. And he has studied the leading Islamic scholars from around the world, the ones that are recognized for interpreting Islamic law. And he read to us from what some of them have said. And do you know that if a man steps outside of his marriage, cheats on his wife, gets a woman pregnant, he says these Islamic scholars say that that man can actually have sexual relations with his daughter that was conceived through this adulterous relationship. He read from the scholars. Did you know that Islam, of course, teaches the idea of pedophilia? Muhammad, their false prophet, was a child molester. He married Aisha at age 6 and supposedly consummated it at age 9. And of course, we see child brides all over the world. Let's call it what it is, pedophilia. Do I need to keep going down the list of things that should cause us to actually criticize, refute, and yes, even mock Islam? Now, I'm not talking about mocking Muslims. There are many Muslims that don't know much about Islam at all because they don't practice Islam. They're just Muslims by birth. Did Jesus mock the religious leaders of his day that were spewing lies and blasphemy? Indeed, he did. I have an entire series for radio and television I did a few years ago entitled Understanding the Insults of Jesus. And when you fully understand what Jesus was saying to the religious leaders of his day, he was definitely mocking them, but he was also exposing very deep truths. But he was using their own religious system and culture to do that. For instance, telling the religious leaders of his day, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes, you are like a whitewashed tomb full of dead men's bones. Now, you have to understand the laws of the Jewish people at that time to know what an insult that is. They would be considered defiled or unclean if they were to walk over a grave or a tomb that had a dead body in it. And that would have not been very hard in that part of the world, to be out on a walking path or to get off of a trail and find yourself walking over a terrain that was very rocky, and only to find out you just walked across an area. Well, if you went down and around, you would find out that there was actually a cavern in there. There was a small cave or a carved out tomb. And you up top, when you were walking, just walked over a grave. Now, under their laws, civic and ceremonial laws, under their laws for cleanliness, they've just been defiled. And now they have to go through a whole washing and cleaning process. You see, Jesus was saying to them, you're so worried about your exterior appearance, but your heart is wicked. Your motives. I know your heart. Man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks on the heart, and your heart is wicked. Your heart is far from me. And you are like a whitewashed tomb, clean and neat looking from the outside, but full of dead men's bones. Your attire, your outfit, your clothing, you look perfect, clean, like you're following every little bit of the law, but your heart is not. Yeah, Jesus was speaking truth that offended them. They were indeed insulted by the truth. He knew exactly what he was doing. So why should I, as a Christian, do any less? Absolutely. I'm going to call out a religious system that promotes pedophilia, incest, murder of Christians and Jews. A religious system that is based on a false god, Allah, who in the Quran, Allah has the same descriptions of Satan in the Bible. They worship Satan. Of course, I'm going to criticize it, ridicule it, denounce it, and even mock it, if that's what it takes. Tucker, however, now all of a sudden wants to get up on his moral high horse and act like the president of the United States has done something just so beneath the presidency. by mocking Islam. Well, he, again, in my opinion, has had no problem mocking Christians or Christianity or the Bible or having guests on his show do so. So understand, Tucker Carlson, he is indeed the very epitome, I believe, of a Romans 1 fool who suppresses the truth and unrighteousness. That does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. As always, thank you for tuning in and supporting the broadcast at worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. We sure do appreciate your support. Till next time, I'm Brian House. May God save America. Take care. July 6, 2005. This is Tom Harper. Man figures plankton stopped his rare cancer. We got more of a response from this from our viewers than anything else you and I have ever discussed.
Tom Harper, 20 years ago, he had mesothelioma, deadly lung cancer, was given weeks to live.